Hey there, and welcome to the Flourish and Health podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am so glad that you are here. It is hard to believe that we are already halfway through June, especially here where I'm living in Ohio. It has been unseasonably warm for us, and so we've had the 90s, which is pretty warm. Now, I'm not going to complain because I am a girl who loves summer. I love to be warm, and I would say probably 9 months of the year I'm cold. So it's really nice to have this warm weather. It is pretty hot, but I'm not going to complain because it will cool down and then it will be cold and I'll have to be bundled up when I go outside. So I'm going to celebrate the fact that we have some sunshine, and today we've had a little bit of rain, which is good because then I know that will make everybody happy that everything gets watered. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about the weather all day today, but I just can't believe that we are already so far into June already. And so the summer months, I look forward to them so much because of the weather and just being able to be outside and take in that fresh air. And you can do that some in the spring and some in the fall, of course, too. But usually in the summer, you have a lot more opportunity. And really being outside on my back porch, if I could do the podcast out there and make sure it sounded good for you, I would sit out there and do it. So when I'm done with this, I'm going back out there. But I am just excited that I get to be with you again today. Hi, and welcome to the Flourish and Health podcast. My name is Stephanie Book, and I am so glad you are here. My hope is to help others see their life beyond where they currently are right now, move away from places where they feel stuck, and empower them to move into a flourishing life. Together, we will learn to recognize our true identity in Christ and apply a reframed mindset to combat the lies that we've been believing about ourselves. We will walk the journey of flourishing in our health, in mind, body, and our connection with God. I'm so excited to walk this journey with you as we create new habits of thinking and turn toward a life that is flourishing. Over the last couple of weeks, I said that I hit my year episodes of full episodes, and I was trying to take some time to really pray about where I want to go next. And I really just have taken some time, but haven't had a ton of time, honestly, to work through what I really want to do. And so I am just going to share a few things that are on my heart today, and hopefully maybe by next week, I'll know exactly the direction for the rest of the year. However, I hope that I'm still bringing content for you that is helpful and inspiring and being able to reach the needs that you have. But last night, this is what made me decide. I thought, I'll just talk about that today. I didn't type out a bunch of notes and I didn't do a lot of research this time. I'm just going to share a little bit that was on my heart. Last night, my husband, Matt, and my son, Ryan, and I were out to eat, and my daughter was away last night. And so we were just talking on the way to dinner, and then we continued that conversation. And let me tell you, for one thing, for those of you who have littles at home, it's so fun when your kids get older and then you have those older talks. And so it's very strange to be in that space now where I have adult children and now we get to do things in a different way. And so I really miss when they were young, but I really love being able to have these kinds of conversations with my kids who are now older. So, my husband and was talking, and my son was talking about goals. My son got a planner yesterday in the mail, and so he's excited about putting that together and just helping him adjust to what he wants to get done, making sure that he's staying on task. And my husband was on a walk with a friend the other day, and they were talking about habits too. They were talking about the book Atomic Habits, which I've talked about before, and I highly recommend you read that book if you have not, because I think it really helps you look at building habits in a different way. But one of the things that we had talked about was how we can quickly step into habits, but then we can fall away from them. And one of the things that I think makes a big difference is sometimes we jump in too much. And we've talked about that probably when we were talking about making goals for the year back before this year started. But I think what happens a lot of time, I talk with my clients often as well, is that when we jump into creating goals or making declarations, so to speak, of what we want to do in our lives, sometimes we make them so big, or we're only looking at that mile ahead rather than the little millimeters that are in front of us. And so last night we were talking about, hey, what could we do differently to move towards the goals that we have? And one of the things was just talking about starting small. And I've talked about that before, but last night we were saying, okay, instead of saying, I want to do this and this and this and this, maybe say, okay, one time a week, I'm going to do this specific thing that's going to move me towards my goal. And so I've talked about that with water. Like if you don't ever drink any water, yes, it's important for you to drink water, especially when you have heat like we have right now. But if you don't ever drink any water, don't go and say, okay, the next day I'm going to drink half my body weight in water if you don't ever have any water in a day. So we want to do those baby steps, because if you say, I'm going to drink water, hey, the first day you might do great. The second day you'll do okay. And then you know what? Then the next day you might get off. You have no routine, no system in there. And then you're like, forget it. And you just go back to not drinking any water. So the best way is like, hey, let's start implementing some habits to get that water in and increase it over time. And so, hey, maybe you say the very first thing I'll do before I drink anything else is have a glass of water. That starts hydrating your body. And say, so if you only got that one glass of water in for the day, you started off your day well, and you can consistently do that. But you know what? What happens is as you consistently do that, then, well, one, your body is going to crave that water, but that's a different story. But also, you're going to be able to have, hey, look at that. I checked this off. Pretty soon, having that glass of water when you first get up, it's a habit. It's something that no longer have to think about because it's already ingrained. So then you can say, hey, I'm going to add another glass of water, maybe mid-morning, or maybe after I've had my cup of coffee, I'm going to have another water. And you see what I'm saying? So you slowly add it in. So once you get to a point where you are consistently doing that habit, you can then increase the habit, or add to it, or keep it the same. You have your choices how to do that. I listened to part of an Ed Milet podcast last week, and he was talking about getting up early. And he used that same example. He's like, don't all of a sudden you get up at 7 and you're like, oh, I need to get up at 5:30 in the morning. Don't just go from 7 a.m. to 5:30 in the morning. There's very few of us that can do that and be able to be consistent with it and stay with it. So, he said, hey, so for a month, set your alarm for 6:45, and for a month, get up at 6:45 instead of 7. And once that time has gone by and you're used to that, then you can do 15 minutes earlier and do 6:30. It might take you a while to get to that 5:30 mark, but what happens is as you slowly do that and create that habit and that routine, then it becomes seamless, and you're no longer thinking, oh, I have to get up so much earlier. Instead, you get to create those habits and really establish something that just comes naturally for you. And so last night when we were talking about these different habits and different things that we wanted to implement, this was such a good reminder for all of us that, hey, like, what are these big things that we're trying to do? Maybe if you just said, hey, maybe once a week, I'm going to do this specific thing. So maybe you are wanting to read a little bit more. And so maybe you read some in a week, but you don't read a lot. So say, hey, I'm going to read 10 minutes a day, maybe for 5 of the 7 days if you're already reading, or like if you're never reading anything. I tell this with my clients. We have these awesome books that go with our program that help you with that mindset piece beyond just the healthy body. Like the inside, it's the healthy mindset, which I think is key. And I know it was key for me and my growth and my changes, but the books are big. And so one of the things I always tell my client is like, they're like, oh, well, I haven't read anything today. I said, well, what could you do? What if you read 1 to 2 pages a day? Or what if you read 5 minutes a day and you had a goal to do that 2 times this week? And I think that they're like, oh, I guess I could do that, or 1 time a week. So because they're big books. And so they look at this as a huge task, right? When you have something that's so big or it seems so far away. But if we break it up in those little bite-sized pieces, it doesn't feel so bad. And after a while, oh, I've read through a whole chapter. Oh, wait, I'm now halfway through the book. And it's because you've slowly added in those routines, those habits to be able to make that more doable and less feeling of defeated or feeling like I have to. I think that a lot of times we put so much pressure and then so many things at one time on us. And so we go great for a couple of days and then we lose steam because we don't have that chance to really implement those routines and systems into our life. I know I'm just jumping right in and I'm sharing a lot of things, but for me, I thought it was just a good reminder as we were talking last night, like what could I do? As I've been saying, I really want to take some time to pray about where I want to go next. And then what happens is other things from life come at me, and then this happens and this happens, and oh, I want to try this, and I'm investing in this thing, and I want to help, my children with this, or oh, I got a phone call and now I need to deal with that. And so all these different things are coming at me, and because I didn't have anything specific set or a specific habit set for me or a time set for me, then those things aren't getting done or they get pushed aside. One of the things that I was talking to a couple different people this last week was a friend of mine. She's got quite a different few things that are on her plate. She's got some business things that she needs to take care of. She's got her family, of course, and then some other avenues, plus, all the other responsibilities of life. And I think that some of the things just were very big. And so we were talking through like, well, what if you set a schedule for yourself and said, hey, maybe on, let's say, Monday and Wednesdays, you'll take care of these tasks, and Tuesday and Thursday, you'll do this task, these important things. So she had two big areas where she really wanted to focus, but was feeling overwhelmed because when she was doing one thing, she felt like she also should be doing the other thing. And so let's say one is, taking care of, doing her work from home, and the other one was, let's say, starting something different, or maybe working for somebody else in a different capacity. And so from home. So Monday and Wednesday, she'd work on her business at these times. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, she could devote to that other business that she is attending to. And then she would have a set schedule, and then she could tell her kids like, hey, on this day and this day, I'm going to work on this, and this day is going to be my focus here. But then on Fridays, we're going to have our fun day. Doesn't mean that she's not going to make time for her kids throughout the week, but she's being able to tell her kids, hey, I'm going to do this work from this time to this time, and then mom is free to do what we want to do. Now, I know we can't always rule everything and control all the things that are around us, but we can think of the things we can control. So when I was telling her this, I thought, well, why don't I do that for me? I have my health coaching business, and then I have this podcast, and I have some other adventures that I'm doing. And so there's a lot of things. And eventually what happens is, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. And what happens? Inaction. Nothing happens. You get paralyzed. You feel overwhelmed. And that's where I was. I've been talking those last couple of weeks about that feeling of overwhelm, because I think I wasn't putting in place the things that I keep talking about, right? That's why I'm still trying to learn, because we're learning how to implement different habits into our life. And so my goal is to maybe look at the things that I am in charge of, or things that I want to do, or the things that are important to me, and then make that specific time. I've talked about time blocks before, but for me, sometimes it's hard for me to switch from one specific thing to another. So I think it'll be more freeing, just like it was for my friend when we talked about it, that, hey, like, what if this day is designated for this specific task? So then you're going to work on that. So maybe let's say you are writing a book, but you also have a business. So maybe, you should write, they say you should write consistently. So maybe that's not a good example, but maybe you have not written any of your book, but you want to write a book. So maybe you say, okay, on Mondays after work or whatever, I'm going to write for a half an hour. And you know what? And that's it. Now, if you have some extra time later in the week and that you happen to be able to write, great. But if not, build that habit that every Monday you're going to write your 30 minutes for your book at the end of your work day. Now, it seems like you're not going to get very far, but I guarantee that it's probably going faster by dedicating 1/2 hour a week than maybe fitting it in here or there, wherever you can fit it in. So that is what I'm going to try to focus on this next week, and make specific days. So I usually take my time on Sunday afternoons and try to plan for the week. And that helps me get focused. Like I talked about last week, about planning my meals and making sure that that's in place, because I don't want to spend that time last minute when I'm already hungry or the day has been long trying to figure out what we want to eat. But if I also set certain times and say, hey, I'm going to focus on podcast on Tuesdays, then great. Then I can pick Tuesdays to work on my podcast, and that is done. And I've had that time set aside rather than trying to fit it in between all the other things that I'm doing. So I don't know. I don't know if this is helpful to you, but I know our conversation last night was just so good. It was fun to reflect and be able to look at, where we have grown, what have we been able to take on so far and celebrating that. And my son brought that up, and I thought that was really cool that he noticed that, my husband and I have taken movement in our lives. Like we have not stayed the same. We work towards growing and becoming different, learning different things, doing different things. And he said that he really enjoys being able to see that in us. And so that was encouraging. And I'm not saying that to boast about me, but just saying how cool it was to have that kind of conversation and see that he understands how good it is to focus on doing something to further what we can learn, how we can grow, and how we can become, but also celebrate where we have been. And so I think that is a really good reminder too. And I talk about it all the time, but sometimes guess who's the hardest on themselves? Me. And so I will spend time thinking about, oh, well, I didn't reach this goal, or I didn't do this, or I don't have that going on. And then we get all stuck in that self-pity and that worry and that comparison mode. But I also can say, oh my goodness, look at what we have been able to do. Look at where we are now. Look at the growth that we have seen in our lives. It doesn't mean that we've reached all the goals that we want. And there's been some that have never come to a fruition, but we continue to contend one little millimeter at a time. But we do get to see, like, I am definitely not the same person I was 6.5 years ago when I came upon this health and wellness world that I didn't really know all about. So it's fun to look at that, but it doesn't mean it's perfect, So I think that that's what I really like about this is we get to learn and grow and try new things and just see where we come out on the other side, and then guess what? Take another step and learn and grow and move on and take that action to move forward. I know I feel like I was all over the place today. And again, like I said, I didn't write anything down or prepare anything, except this was what was on my heart. I think it's so often that we just put so much pressure on ourselves to do all the things, but then never make the time. And then that feeling of inaction is just so heavy, right? It makes you feel like you cannot move forward because you have all these different things coming at you, but you've not made any movement forward. So my goal this week is to pick specific days to work on specific things. I am a hard worker and I am usually determined to do the things that I want to do. And so I will get it done. Whether I end up staying really late because if I promised it was going to get done, I will do it. But I want to change that and look at points of like, hey, when I'm focusing on this day to do this specific task, then I don't have to worry about the 5 million other things that might be going on in my brain or the things on my to-do list that are not there, because right now on Tuesday afternoon or whatever time it is focused for this specific thing. So I hope this helps you this week, just to be able to look at your week and see what could you do different? What maybe could you focus on once a week that might move you forward towards the goals that you have? Or could you separate some of the things you want to do and move them along to different days? Maybe you really want to organize your house. And so instead of or you want to have a routine of having your house clean, maybe instead of trying to clean your whole house on Saturday morning, maybe it's like, oh, maybe I'm going to dust on Monday, and on Tuesday is wash the floors, and Wednesday is the bathrooms, or I probably would do the bathrooms and then the floors, who knows, but you know what I'm saying. You would want to do those step by steps, so that you had that in place. Or you're going to organize your kitchen. You're not going to just say, I'm going to organize the whole thing at once. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to pull one thing out and then you're going to be overwhelmed. So maybe say, okay, I'm going to do 2 shelves of the food cabinet today, and that's all you do. Guess what? Those 2 shelves of that cabinet, that's progress. You don't have to do all of the things to have that progress. That one little millimeter step forward is progress. So look at yourself today. And when you sit down, if you don't plan, I of course encourage you to plan out your week. But what is one thing you could do this week that you have said that you wanted to do over and over again, but you've never made the time? I challenge you to find that time this week and write it down. Make an appointment for yourself and say, hey, Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I'm going to do blah, 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 and do it. And see how that progress is. Even if it's like, hey, Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I'm going to write 10 words on a piece of paper toward my book. I don't care what it is. Don't make it so overwhelming. Just do the action. And so you can kind of join us along my household as we talked about those goals that we want to look at and start to implement. And hopefully this might give you some ideas of what to do. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. Send me an email. It's easy. It's my name, Stephanie at stephaniebook.com. It's super easy to email me, or you can send me a message on my social media and ask questions. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, if you've never read the book Atomic Habits, I'll put that in the show links because it's a great book to read. And then there's tons of other books that I could suggest, so to help you as you are planning your life. But I would just, most of all, just challenge you, pick one thing today, one thing this week that you say that you want to work on that is important to you, something that you keep saying you're going to do, but you haven't done yet, and write it down. Make that appointment for yourself. And I don't know, maybe let me know. I would absolutely love to know what's that one thing that you're going to work on or set a specific time for this week. It would brings so much joy to me to know that you heard me and that you are going to implement something. And I don't care if it's not perfect. And if you don't get it done, I don't care. Even writing it down and saying that you wanted to do that is progress. It's at that action step towards that. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you were encouraged today. Please pass this on to anyone that you think it might help. And I will see you next week. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me as we walk towards this life of flourishing. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and would love, love, love for you to take a moment to subscribe to my podcast and maybe even leave a review. Likes and reviews like yours will allow my podcast to be seen by others and hopefully help them as they walk through their own journey of growth. So until next time, please remember that you are amazing, my friend, and you are meant to live a life full and flourishing. Take care.